Canada feels like a place where things aren't working. After 8 years in office, isn't that your government's fault?
Hey, welcome to today's video, folks. Today we are joining Vasi Kapelos as she interviews Chrystia Freeland shortly after the release of the 2024-2025 budget. I've cut up some highlights of this interview, and if you're not familiar with Vasi and her interview style, she is great. And today she is going to hold Freeland accountable and give a lot of pushback to a lot of her talking points through this interview today. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the first section of the video.
My first question to you is based on the response you offered to Pierre Poilievre's statement in the House of Commons. Why is the fight you want with the Conservatives about taxing the rich?
My focus is not on the Conservatives. My focus is on Canadians. And our budget today was about meeting the moment for Canadians. It was about fairness. It was about saying Canadians have real needs right now. They need more homes built faster. They need life to be more affordable. They need us to invest in the economic capacity of the country. They need us especially to do it for fairness for younger Canadians who are struggling to get ahead. And they need us to do it in a fiscally responsible way. That is the plan that we put forward today. And it's going to be up to the Conservatives to say whether they support it or not.
But the focus that you drew in your response was very much, for example, on the new tax, the changes to capital gains tax. And I'm wondering, did you need to even introduce those changes if you had acknowledged that the housing crisis was what it was at an earlier juncture? Would you need to be spending so much on increasing the supply if you had realized perhaps earlier that you could have deflated demand to better impact prices and not raise taxes in any way?
Canada is a growing country, and I think that is a great thing.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence, and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. Like an improv conversation. Improvisation.
I think as a country, we have been under-investing in housing for a generation. So I am really glad that our government is investing massively in housing, is investing massively in infrastructure to support housing. And I am glad to see provinces and municipalities and also the private sector and not-for-profits really getting involved. I think it's great that Canada is growing. It's just really important to be sure that a growing country has enough homes, that we have homes for young Canadians, that we have homes for new Canadians. That is about fairness, and that's what we're doing.
Wasn't that your government's job over the last 8 years? When you say for generations governments have been under-investing, doesn't that make your own government culpable?
Bingo! I think we found the culprit here. Don't really think there's anybody else you can blame with how long you've been in power.
Our government has been focused on housing and focused on infrastructure since we first formed government. The challenge is more acute now. It's more acute in Canada, and it is more acute around the world.
But why weren't you prepared and willing to do that in 2021, for example, when the average price of a home was already 97% higher than 2015? Were you talking to people in Toronto in the age group that you're referencing 2 years ago who thought they could afford a home there, or in Vancouver who thought they could afford a home then? Why didn't you try and meet the moment then to avoid having to spend as much as you are now to try and meet the moment now?
Well, 2021, of course, was still peak COVID. So the
it kept going up in 2022.
No, so yeah, but you referred to 2021. That was peak COVID. There were a lot of distortions through that period, and some of those economic distortions are part of the reason that housing is such a challenge. I think the important thing is to be meeting the moment now. The important thing is to be doing everything we can, to pulling every lever, to pressing every button to get more homes built. That is what our government is doing. So I absolutely agree
is it fair to say your government will do more on that side?
I absolutely agree that that is important. I do though want to say more broadly, I believe in a growing Canada.
Wow. Vashi was trying to push back and jump in with another question, but Freeland cut her off completely just to drop a completely empty statement. I believe in a growing Canada. Perfect textbook example of empty political talk. Let's listen to Freeland, throw out some more talking points, and then Vashi will jump back in with another question of her own.
I think that is a strength of our country, that we're able to grow our population. That is a huge strength of ours when it comes to the demographic challenge so many countries are facing. We need to be sure that our housing supply and our population match up. And I think that is what our government is absolutely focused on doing. That is what Canadians want and need.
Do you feel, I guess, some responsibility that your government didn't ensure that was the case over the past few years, therefore somewhat casting doubt on the value of immigration as you espouse it and as so many Canadians have believed? We show polls, you can see polls, of view of immigration has wavered, has changed from the steadfast way in which Canadians believed it did contribute to the economy and the fabric of our country over the years. And that is mostly due to the fact that they believe the immigration that your government presided over has negatively impacted their ability to afford a home.
I think that Canadians recognize what you and I are just talking about, what is just common sense, which is we need to be sure that the supply of homes is keeping up with the people in Canada, and we need to be sure that there are homes for young Canadians to live in and to buy. I also think the vast majority of Canadians welcome immigration. They welcome it because of the benefits to our society and the benefits to our economy. That's what we're doing.
I'm glad that you brought up the issue of delivering, because my final question is around why Canadians should trust your government to execute on the plan you're laying out in this budget. You've been in power for 8 years. I'm thinking of other measures around housing that you've introduced. For example, the loan program that you topped up most recently with $15 billion to build apartment buildings. That program was announced in 2017. You've lent out $18 billion, 11,000 apartments in 7 years have been constructed. What about your record should give Canadians assurance that you will execute on this plan?
I'll give you a couple of examples. One example is our fiscal guideposts. I set those out in the fall economic statement. I am sure you interviewed a lot of people who were very skeptical afterwards, who were very skeptical ahead of this budget that we would hit the mark. We have hit every single mark with some room. So we take delivery extremely seriously.
And I'm not intimating in any way that you haven't done significant things. And I think, for example, the daycare example is a good one. The cost for a lot of Canadians has gone down, but the wait list to get in is growing at a rapid rate. Many people in this city, for example, can't get into a daycare spot for another 8 or 9 months. And that brings me back to my original point, which is, can Canadians actually have confidence that you're going to execute? One of the lines you've been saying over the past 2 weeks is, Canada feels like a place where things aren't working. After 8 years in office, isn't that your government's fault?
What Canadians need to decide right now is...
Massive pause before she started even responding or giving an answer. You can tell that Freeland has nothing for this. She's about to ramble some more. I would love to use the Michael Scott clip again, but twice in one video is a bit much, so let's listen to what she has to say.
Do they believe that we are living in a country where the promise of Canada can and should be open to all Canadians, particularly to young Canadians for whom it feels out of reach? We have put forward a plan to deliver for young Canadians. We believe it does require a partnership of the federal government, provinces, municipalities, private sector, public sector. We do think it takes an activist government, and we have a plan to deliver that fairness, to unlock the promise of Canada for all Canadians, especially the younger generation.
I'll leave it there, Minister. I'm out of time. I know your time is limited. Thank you for making time for us today. I appreciate it.
That's our video for today, folks. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe. Anything you do really helps me out and will help me provide future content for you. And with that out of the way, just want to say thank you again. You take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time.